Well, those were the headlines, and let's now move on to our top story tonight. Well, a day after Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri briefed the all-party delegates regarding the recent India-Pakistan tensions, today the Foreign Secretary briefed MPs who are part of these 7 delegations who will be visiting global capitals. The all-party delegations will project India's national consensus and a resolute approach to combating terrorism in all forms and manifestations. In fact, they would carry forth to the world the country's strong message of a zero-tolerance approach against terrorism. From a business perspective, this diplomatic push could have far-reaching implications. A stable geopolitical environment is critical for investor confidence, and India's proactive stance may bolster its image as a secure destination for foreign investment. These delegations will be led by leaders across the political spectrum. For instance, you have the Bharatiya Janata Party MP Baijayant J. Panda, Janata Dal United leader Sanjay Jha, Shiv Sena's Srikant Singh Shinde, Congress's Shashi Tharoor, amongst many others, leaders who will be flying off to global capitals starting tomorrow. The first delegation, like I said, will be leaving for Japan tomorrow, and then it'll travel to Korea, Indonesia, Malaysia, and then Singapore. These delegations will be covering the European countries as well as the United States and Middle Eastern countries. Let's listen into what Shashi Tharoor said on these all-party delegations in terms of what it looks at achieving in terms of tangible outcomes for India.
Delegation goes to France, there may well be more detailed discussions. In this committee, there were no such.
But French delegation expressed solidarity with India.
The French delegation not just expressed solidarity, they used the word soutien, which in English means support. They expressed support for India at this difficult time.
All right, to decode what this strategic move means for India's diplomatic outreach, I'm now joined by Veena Sekhri, former High Commissioner to Bangladesh, and Sanjeev Srivastava, political commentator. First to you, ma'am, how significant do you think this move is, and what do you think it achieves for India in concrete terms for the kind of diplomatic support that it got, and in light of the new normal that India is now espousing?
Initiative, much needed initiative, and it signals India's new approach to this problem of terrorism. Terrorism for us is an existential threat, and Pakistan has been using terrorism. Pakistan is a state sponsor of terror, and every time we have been suffered the hostilities we have always resulting from a terrorist attack by Pakistan. Now, it's time that this message got across to the world. India has been far too patient. India has been, using what is termed as strategic restraint. But I think that period is now over. What our Prime Minister has announced is a new normal, a new determination to have a new strategic resolve to respond strategically, to respond in kind, to respond with firepower to end this problem once and for all. And I think that India's new normal, India's new resolve needs to be explained to the world. And this is very important because I think this is one thing that we have not been doing so far. Pakistan does it all the time. They keep on and on talking to the world and how they are, exonerating themselves and talking about all kinds of wrong things about what's happening in India. I think this determination now to face the kind of double talk that Pakistan has been doing globally, this new approach to global diplomacy, to public diplomacy at the international level is very significant. And I think it will succeed because the composition of the delegations are across the board. They are all party, all community, all religion. And it shows that all of India is united in this resolve to meet the terror strikes from across the border face on. We have met them, we have countered them, we have overcome them. We've hit the terrorist headquarters in all across Pakistan, from Murid K to Bahawalpur and other, the Jaish-e-Mohammed, Lashkar-e-Taiba and other terrorist headquarters. Right. We have hit the Air Force bases of Pakistan. When Pakistan tried to escalate, we hit back at the Air Force bases, and then Pakistan came suing for peace. But even though there is a pause, it's not a ceasefire, it's not a Yudh Viram, it's a pause. But even though there is a pause, we think we need to explain ourselves, and I think it's a very important determination that the government has made, and I wish to all the delegations.
Absolutely, ma'am. And this becomes all the more critical given the kind of misinformation and disinformation that was spread by Pakistan with respect to the strikes that India undertook, which were very measured, which were very, very precise, and were not intended at causing any harm to the civilian population. But talking about politically, Mr. Srivastava, as ma'am also mentioned, that all parties are uniting to spread out a single message across the world. How critical then this exercise becomes in light of that fact?
See, I think Mrs. Sikri has explained the situation and summed it up very well. I will only add and pick up a couple of points which she raised in her answer. See, the most important thing is, like she said, that Pakistan, as it is at this game all the time, 24/7, 365 days. So India needs to catch up on that front. We are very good with our politics. We are very good with our armed response. Like she said, our resolve this time is very clear that every act of terror against India will be seen as an act of war and will be suitably dealt with in the manner that Operation Sindoor was conducted. But in international PR, international diplomacy, taking everybody along, making sure that public opinion internationally is with us is something that Islamabad has been doing better than us, and we need to admit it. So this is a very welcome development. And like she said, that since it's all-party delegation, it presents a very credible, united, forceful, one voice of India. So the world needs to sit and listen. Because again, in Operation Sindoor, what happened was that whether we like it or not, somehow the Pakistanis were able to take that narrative beyond terror. So they have once again got the focus back on Kashmir. They made it a warlike situation. And India's point of that we are acting against terror, our war is against terror, somewhat got little diluted. So India needs to be very focused, and it has to be a consistent, sustainable offensive, because that's the way to match Pakistan. Also, we need to remember that while you just played the clip of Mr. Shashi Tharoor, and while we know a lot of countries were with us and supporting us, but at the same time, the truth is that public vocal support came from a few countries only, but it came from Pakistan, like whether it is Turkey or China or to some extent Bangladesh, whereas nobody spoke as clearly and vocally in our favor. So that's something we need to, and this is not a weakness. See, unless we realize and come to appreciate where we are lacking, we will never be able to combat Pakistan on this front. We may be very strong militarily. So we need to work at it and work at it.
But Mr. Srivastava, I'll have to slightly disagree with you on that front. I mean, Azerbaijan and Turkey have always been aligned with Pakistan for their own, personal reasons, best known to them. But Israel has stood with India. Of course, support has also come in from Russia as well. And of course, almost all the countries have unequivocally condemned terror. So we all know where terror is coming from and who is fomenting trouble. Ma'am, let me come to you on that point now that we are talking about this global messaging and, of course, India's outreach to the world. It's an incredible exercise, and we do hope that it will come out with the returns that it is expecting. But this becomes all the more necessary also because Trump's been meddling in this matter. He's trying to take credit where there's none to be taken, and perhaps that has complicated matters for the country, and hence this diplomatic push to clear out the messaging that it was a bilateral agreement both on India and Pakistan side, and the fact that the DGM of Pakistan called first. That messaging really needs to be cleared and needs to go out.
Yes, I agree with you. This messaging has to go out. I agree that there's a lot of, watering down by President Trump, and there are talks about why it happened, talk about his colleague, Gentry Beach, his college friend, who in the past few months had been visiting Pakistan and Bangladesh and Turkey and talking about various business deals. There is also the discussion with Qatar and what Qatar has been saying. So all this only adds to the fact that India has to go out and talk about our point of view and explain it very clearly and unequivocally through the countries across the world. And the way in which the messaging has been done, the way in which the division of countries which each of the groups will visit has been done very well to make sure that the voice is heard across the world. So I think this message is now really vital. And even with USA more than anybody else, we have to go and explain that where has the misunderstanding arisen and how it needs to be corrected immediately. And I think that the way in which it has been structured, the way in which our statements have been made, the way in which the full parliamentary support is there, the full political party support is there, it is already a very good start, because we are able to tell everybody that this is what our stand is. And Pakistan's miscommunication, misinformation, disinformation, and outright, blatant wrong messaging. For example, now their army chief has been made a field marshal today, we understand. So, promoting him instead of to cover up the fact that they got such a drubbing. So this is a kind of deliberate kind of situation that Pakistan always resorts to. And of course, General Asim Munir thinks that he's achieved his objective, so he's not bothered about anything else. Whereas India has been correct. India has destroyed these objectives that we wanted to destroy in Pakistan. And we have to get the message out to the rest of the world, even with President Trump, even with everybody else, and find out what is the reasoning, why is there kind of a different approach on this, and correcting any misunderstanding that may be there.
Absolutely, ma'am. And this hyphenation that Donald Trump has brought about with India and Pakistan, that needs to be clarified as well. As a victim and an aggressor cannot be spoken on in the same breath. But ma'am and sir, I'll come to you in just a bit, but let's also hear what Sanjay Kumar Jha had to say on this all-party delegation.
बात थी इसमें, एक सबसे बड़ी बात थी कि जो पहलगांव में घटना हुआ वो जिस हिसाब से आतंकवादी लोगों ने किया, पूरा का पूरा पाकिस्तान स्पॉन्सर जो ट्रेनिंग कैंप चलता है उसके द्वारा किया गया। और उसके बाद जो इंडिया ने जो स्टेप्स लिए हैं, जो 9 उनके टेररिस्ट ट्रेनिंग सेंटर थे, उसके अब इमेजेज आ रहे हैं, उसका फोटोग्राफ्स है, और जिसको हिट करके, तो वो चीज़ बताना। प्लस सबसे बड़ी बात है कि पाकिस्तान का जो स्टेट है और पाकिस्तान की जो आर्मी है, दोनों का इंटेलिजेंस है इसमें। इन टेररिस्ट को ये प्रॉक्सी वार की तरह इंडिया के साथ किया हुआ है। ये घटना के पीछे भी जाएंगे, ये भी बात आई, तो 40 साल से ये इंडिया के ऊपर कर रहे हैं। अब जो प्रधानमंत्री जी ने कहा है न्यू नॉर्मल, अब होता है ना, अब बस हो गया। अब जो है इसके बाद हम लोग आपके डिजाइन को समझते हैं, अब अंदर जाकर के हिट करेंगे। तो अपने सेल्फ डिफेंस में इंडिया ने अब आगे जाकर के ये किया है, और जो वो कहा है कि आगे अगर कोई भी एक्टिविटी होगा तो एक्ट ऑफ वॉर माना जाएगा। इन सब चीज़ों से सेंसिटाइज करना।
Absolutely, enough is enough, and any activity like this henceforth will be treated as an act of a war. So strong messaging coming out of India, and of course that's what the Prime Minister also said a couple of days back after that dastardly terrorist attack. But Mr. Srivastava, let's also look at the other side now. Now, immediately after India announced its diplomatic plan of extending an outreach to global capitals, immediately after, Pakistan too decided. So it's pretty much like many of the other decisions that have been taken, starting with the first 5 decisions, the first 5 diplomatic strikes that India took. Ever since then, Pakistan has been, just terribly copying India's strategy. And now you have Bilawal Bhutto along with several other Pakistani leaders who will be making a similar outreach. Do you think that's going to help Pakistan's case, given the fact that this time it's been made amply clear, and several times in the past as well, on this being a terrorist state and a state that shelters and has previously sheltered Osama and other UN-sanctioned terrorists?
See, that Pakistan is a terror-sponsor state, and Pakistan is the global hub of terrorism, is, I think, the world knows it. The tragedy from our perspective is that the world does not acknowledge that in so many words, because everybody looks at things from their own self-interest point of view. So China is a known supporter of Pakistan. The US has tried to run with the hare and hunt with the hound, so to say. The US and Trump, who is a complete maverick, and nobody can predict him and nobody can understand him, but he has virtually played as if both sides are equal from the perspective of Washington. So, because they have their own vested interests in Pakistan, trying to keep, they may be having their air bases or whatever. Russia, an all-weather friend of India, is now no longer the Russia of Mrs. Gandhi's days. It so much leans on China for a support on a number of things. It does supply, it is the biggest arms supplier to India. It's a very important ally. But did Russia actually stand up and be counted as somebody vocally speaking for India? The answer, whether we like it or not, is a no. So that's what I meant, to which you disagreed, but it's fine. We can all disagree or agree to disagree. So that is the reason. While India is a much stronger, more fairer, the truth is on our side, but we need to keep beating on the issue, keep on a sustained campaign. So that is why this outreach is very important. And one really wishes that it becomes a successful outreach. And it has to be an every time process. It cannot be a kind of, okay, one-off event. So like Pakistan, they may be copying us right now, but they are doing it all the time. Their caucus, their lobbies, the world over. Pakistan survives on its army and its PR. That's the bottom line, Pakistan. Unfortunately, India, because it's such a big power and a big nation, we sometimes take our eyes off this very important issue of global outreach, which a mistake which has been certainly rectified this time, and I just hope they continue on this path.
Right, sir. But when you mentioned that point about Russia, well, it is, as a country, it is suffering the consequences of a war. There's been more than 3 years that it is suffering. But of course, it has been a good friend of India since past many, many decades. And of course, it has condemned not once, but twice. In fact, Putin has called the Prime Minister at least twice as far as, this dastardly attack is concerned. But ma'am, the big question now is that India has taken several attempts, whether it is related to the grey listing of Pakistan at FATF is concerned, whether it is related to, not voting at IMF as far as that is concerned. But how can India and what can India do more to isolate Pakistan economically, diplomatically, and make sure that it remains a pariah state for its role in fomenting terrorism?
I think that, first of all, this whole issue of terrorism and how to counter it, this is an issue on which India has been seeking global support. Even at the UN, we wanted to have a convention against terrorism, but then there's no agreement even on the definition of terrorism. So I think that is all the more reason that India is mounting this campaign, sending groups of MPs to different countries, shows that we have taken now a stronger approach, a different approach. I think we have to show to the world that every terrorist attack anywhere in the world has traced its roots back to Pakistan. Pakistan is a state sponsor of terror. How come that the terrorist headquarters are in Pakistan for all these UN banned organizations like Jaish-e-Mohammed and Lashkar-e-Taiba? The world knows it, but they keep quiet. Now we have to call out the world and say you can no longer keep quiet because it's going to come back to bite you as well. And not only that, Pakistan maintains the terrorist headquarters of these groups in their country. And when India destroyed those headquarters and about 100 terrorists died, the first thing that Pakistan did was to offer compensation. Like Masood Azhar had been offered 14 crore rupees for that. And they promised the terrorists will rebuild your headquarters. Where do you think all the money is going to come from? From the IMF loan of $1 billion. I mean, this is what we have to point out to the rest of the world. How come the IMF is reducing its own credibility by giving a loan of $1 billion in the middle of a hostile situation that existed between India and Pakistan, where it's the Pakistan-led terror attack in Pahalgam that has led to the subsequent Indian retaliation and the subsequent hostilities escalation by Pakistan, to which, of course, we also gave a fitting response by destroying their air bases. So, all these matters, this consecutiveness, we know that there's some media in the world that is trying to project Pakistan in a light. China has bought over all the media in the world, whether it's the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Economist. It's been bought over by China for years, for decades. And Qatar also is very much into this media game. So I think we have to really put our best foot forward. We have to say how unequivocal we are on this. We have to point out the facts as they are. We can no longer allow the world to exonerate Pakistan. Right. We have to call out these facts because the world is sleeping on these facts. But if we can call it out, if we take a big campaign on this, then I think we will have success because the world has always listened. And today, India is a huge economy. India is, if you just take our trade with the USA. Pakistan trade with USA is $7 billion US, and ours is in the multi-hundreds of billions of dollars, and target of $500 billion for 2030, the mutually agreed target. So, we have a mutual existence. Our commerce minister is right now in USA trying to work out the bilateral trade agreement. So we have these commitments, we have these interactions with all the countries of the world, and I think that this is the right time when the countries of the are looking to invest in India as the next big market. China is now on its way out because the economy is declining, consumption is going down, factories are shutting down, and the people are moving their investments out of China. They're moving into India.
Absolutely.
So this is a very good time to match our economic heft, our economic attractiveness as a destination with our concerns on terror, because we must understand that it was our measured response that allowed the hostilities to end in 4 days. And this was India's sagaciousness, India's strategy that allowed it to happen. Otherwise, our investments could well have been threatened. Our foreign investments could well have been threatened. But we allowed it all to come to an end within 4 days. Look at the Russia-Ukraine war. Look at the Gaza-Israel war. It's been going on for years. But we have allowed it to come to an end. We've shown our skill, our superiority, and our determination to not allow hostilities to continue. All this messaging has to go out to the rest of the world.
Yes. Yes. Ma'am, you were mentioning about IMF, and IMF has come out with a cautionary note with respect to the bailout that it's given to Pakistan. And of course, in its defense, it is stated that it was, in fact, approved way in advance, in fact, way before the terrorist attack. Nonetheless, it does send out a wrong message to you, Mr. Srivastava, since we are now talking of these global agencies. The grey listing of Pakistan, for instance, at FATF, it got first included in the grey list in 2008, then it got removed in 2009. Then it came back into the list from 2012 to 15, 18 and 2022. But it has been freely carrying out these terrorist attacks. So what can be expected in concrete terms from the FATF meeting, which is due to happen in a few weeks from now? And, if the grey listing indeed happens, then will economic sanctions follow soon, given the fact that this is now a global campaign against terror that India will be leading?
Well, I really wish and pray and hope that what you are suggesting actually comes true. But recent events, whether it was the sanctioning of the IMF loan, at the time when Operation Sindoor was continuing and Pahalgam attack was just 10 days old, still they had the gumption to go out and sanction the loan. Similarly, in the UNSC, we couldn't get a resolution passed which named the organization which took responsibility for this attack. So, see the part. Mrs. Sikri was saying it's time the world wakes up. It's great to think like that. How do you wake up people who are already awake? So you can wake up people and shake them up who are sleeping. But this world has known the kind of terror India has suffered, has seen the kind of perpetrator Pakistan is of terror, but for each one's their own vested interest. So we may keep crying horse that see it will come one day, come and bite you. But till the time it actually comes and bites them, they are not beyond a point interested in India's problem. So while it's very important to have this outreach, it's equally important and more important to continue building on our defense systems, on our armaments, on modernization of army, because we always have to remember that we are not fighting Pakistan. And like Pakistan used terrorists against us as proxies, China uses Pakistan as a proxy. Our real problem is with Beijing. And if we forget it, that is at our own cost.
And sir, it's also been exposed. It's also been exposed given the meeting between the Chinese foreign minister and, of course, Pakistan's deputy prime minister.
They don't care about being exposed. They have stopped and blocked our resolutions on Pakistani-based terrorists for last 10, 15 years.
Sir, but they have to care about the fact that India is one of the fastest growing economies in the world, and there is a real threat of companies actually moving away from China. You have Apple actually looking at moving its production away from China. It's been doing that since COVID-19 pandemic, and many more brands will follow soon.
China wants trouble in India so that the world doesn't see India also as a safe destination. See, we have to understand the larger picture, unfortunately. Then only will we be able to combat it. So that's why China created all this problem. Because if they are not good enough, they also want to project that India is also
Yes.
not the most secure destination. That was their larger game.
May I
Right.
add something here?
Right.
Yeah, I'd like to add something here
Right. And
because
India has been a sir. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. I think that you're right that yes, India, they're trying to prove that India is not a safe destination. That's a big objective for China and Pakistan together because they are ruining and looking with great horror at all the foreign direct investment that's coming into India. But I think that India's own response, that is the important point, that this response was made by India on its own planning, its own strategy, and its own equipment, the BrahMos missile, the S-400, the Akash Tir, where we use our own indigenous systems as well, in addition to, of course, the Rafale jets and so on. But I think that this combination and how we were able to use them so effectively against Pakistan and then decide to stop, that we're not going to continue. We don't want the war to continue. It affects our people, it affects our economy, and we are going to continue our trend of modernization. So I think this messaging that has already gone out to the world as a result of the actual events over the last 4 days, as we saw before the pause in the hostilities, but we're still watching it very carefully. And we're determined in the meanwhile to convey to the world that they can no longer take a sleepy posture on terror. Yes, the world is awake, but they prefer to close their eyes. We know that countries like UK who are, always taking this very favorable view towards Pakistan, or, some elements in the deep state in USA as well. But we have to talk to the leaders in USA, in
Right.
UK, in Japan,
Right.
in South Korea, because if we are the target today, tomorrow they can be the target. So these
Right.
attacks, we know that there are these terrorist attacks which happen in
Right,
Canada, which happen in Germany, which attack markets.
Yes.
Many people try to hush them up and treat them as
Yes.
just a law and order problem. But that's not the
Yes,
long-term
right.
solution. You cannot allow it to continue.
Right, ma'am. So it is a global problem, and that's essentially what India, ma'am, what India is trying to portray. But one final question before we wrap up this discussion. We have just about 30 minutes to go. I want to ask you about the point about IMF, the fact that we were discussing these bailouts. IMF has clarified that, it was issued way before this terrorist attack happened. It's also slapped 11 new conditions on Pakistan, but repeatedly, over and over again, it's been issuing bailouts to Pakistan. Why exactly has that happened from IMF, and why does it not feel the need? These member countries do not feel the need to curb that funding, those bailouts that have been given to Pakistan.
Well, actually, this time, India has taken a very strong position. For example, we abstained. In the IMF, there's no possibility of negative voting, but abstaining is a huge indication of displeasure, and we've done that. And as you said rightly, IMF itself has hurriedly put in some additional conditionalities on that money which is given to Pakistan, but that's not enough. We have to keep at it. Now, you're right, people have been taking a very relaxed notion, even the way in which, Pakistan was finally cleared from the grey list and so on. We have to get them right back on it again. And we have to ourselves think about declaring Pakistan as a state sponsor of terror. If we're not willing to do it ourselves, we can't expect other countries to do it. So we ourselves have to consider what we need to do now to make sure that Pakistan can no longer continue with impunity its terrorist attacks on India. The first thing we said quite rightly, that every terrorist attack will be considered an act of war. This is a very strong statement, and it implies an immediate response to any terrorist attack that Pakistan may consider taking up in India. And we know that Pakistan's own internal situation is so weak. They're facing revolt from the Baluchis, from the Pashtuns in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Every part of Pakistan is resenting or greatly resentful of the Punjabi domination and the army's domination. So I think we are very aware of the situation. But the new thing is that we're getting the global approach, getting world public diplomacy, international public diplomacy to get the world on our side. And this is a new effort. It's not the only effort. It should continue. One, we are doing it now, but certainly the effort should continue at the UNGA, at other places, intervening at all times and maintaining the unity of approach within India. This is very important. So yes, the IMF is being disappointing, but we have to continue to talk to them. We can't allow them to get away with it.
Right. Absolutely, ma'am. Very well said. We cannot really allow them to get past it. And especially with this terrorist attack, India making the diplomatic move, and it will continue, is what the sense that you're giving. Remains to be seen the kind of outcomes that India will be able to achieve, both in terms of investments as well, given the fact that India is looked at as a trusted destination, and of course on building pressure on Pakistan. Thank you very much, ma'am and sir, for joining us here on ET Now and sharing